The auction of despair. The night sky above Zarion 6 was heavy with smoke and red light. In the dark streets of the alien city, a crowd gathered around a metal stage where the slave auction began. Creatures from many worlds whispered, their eyes hungry for bargains and power. Among the cages stood a thin blue-skinned woman with tired golden eyes. Her name was Rena, a Thalorian mother who had sold herself to save her starving child. Her body trembled in the cold, her heart even colder. Every sound of the auctioneer's hammer echoed like thunder in her chest. Around her, alien guards shouted, pushing slaves to stand straight. Some cried, some prayed, some looked lost, but Rena only closed her eyes and whispered a name. Her child's name. Again and again. When her turn came, the auctioneer raised his voice. Lot 47, Thalorian female, young, healthy. Strong mind. Laughter spread through the crowd. Someone shouted, Thalorians are useless now. They can't even fight, another said. Sell her cheap. We'll use her for cleaning work. Rena lowered her head. Shame burning in her heart. She had once been a teacher on her homeworld. Now she was nothing but a product, a number, a thing to be sold. Then, through the noise, the crowd grew silent. From the shadowed corner of the market, a tall figure walked forward. A human, dressed in a dark captain's coat with the emblem of the old Terran fleet. His name was Captain Mason Hale. His face was calm, but his eyes looked like they carried the weight of 1,000 storms. He didn't speak. He just looked at Rena, and something in his stare made the auctioneer nervous. Human buyer. Someone whispered, What would a human want with a Thalorian? The auctioneer cleared his throat. Starting price? 300 credits. Mason's voice broke the silence, deep and steady. 5,000, the crowd gasped. Even Rena opened her eyes in shock. No one paid that much for a single slave. The auctioneer blinked, unsure, then slammed the hammer down. Sold. To Captain Mason Hale. The crowd murmured as he walked forward and unlocked the cage himself. Rena stepped back, confused, afraid. He didn't touch her roughly, he just said, Come. You're free now. But she didn't believe him. Freedom was a lie spoken by rich men. Still, she followed, her chains clinking softly with every step outside. The wind of Zarion 6 howled through the steel alleys. Mason led her to a small shuttle with the name Solara Dawn painted on its side. Once inside, the ship rose quietly, leaving the noise and fire of the city behind. Rena sat in silence, her hands shaking. Mason placed a small food pack before her. Eat, he said simply. She hesitated, watching him with fear. Why did you buy me? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He looked at her for a long moment, then replied, Because I couldn't leave you there. That night, as the ship drifted through the dark of space, Rena stared at the stars outside. She thought of her child, alone on a dying planet. Tears fell slowly down her cheeks, and she whispered, Please, stay alive. From the front seat, Mason said nothing, but his hands clenched around the controls. In his eyes burned a silent anger. Not at her, but at the galaxy that forced her to this fate. Somewhere deep in the ship, a small red light blinked. A hidden message flashed on a dark screen. Captain Hale. Report immediately. Experiment status required. Mason switched it off. His jaw tight, he glanced at Rena again and whispered to himself, I've already made my choice. And in that cold silence between stars, two broken souls began a journey that would change the fate of many worlds. The man with a broken passed the ship, Solara Dawn, drifted through the cold silence of space. Stars moved slowly across the window. Their light soft and distant. Rena sat near the back of the ship, holding a small blanket Mason had given her. She didn't trust him yet, but something about the human captain felt different. Mason Hale sat in the cockpit, his hands resting on the controls though the ship was on autopilot. He watched the stars, his face calm but tired. He had flown across half the galaxy, seen too many wars, too many broken worlds. Yet somehow this quiet alien woman sitting behind him had shaken something deep inside him. Rena spoke softly. You didn't have to buy me. Mason didn't look back. I know, he said. But I had to. She frowned, confused. Why? He was silent for a long moment, then answered, Because I've seen enough people sold for survival. His voice carried a weight she couldn't understand yet. The ship's hum filled the air like a low heartbeat. Rena tried to stand, but the gravity was weak and she stumbled. Mason turned quickly and caught her before she fell. For a brief moment, their eyes met, her golden eyes full of fear and sadness, his gray eyes full of regret. He helped her back to the seat and said quietly, You're safe here. but safety was something she had forgotten long ago. Later, when she slept, Mason stood by the window, staring into the stars. In the reflection, he saw his own scarred face and the old symbol of the Terran fleet on his jacket. Once he had been a decorated officer, a hero of the Velkar War, but that was before he lost everything. His crew, his ship, and the woman he loved. He whispered her name under his breath. Lyra. The memory hit him like fire. He remembered her last words. Save who you can, Mason, even if it kills you. And maybe that's why he couldn't walk away from Rhina. Suddenly a light blinked on the console, a coded message arriving through encrypted human channels. He hesitated before opening it. A cold voice echoed through the speakers. Captain Hale, your report is overdue. The experiment must continue. His eyes hardened. He deleted the message without replying. Whatever mission he was part of, it no longer mattered. He had made his own path now, hours later. Rena woke up and walked quietly toward the control room. She stopped when she saw Mason standing by a holographic map of space. Red lines marking forbidden zones. She noticed one small point glowing brighter, the planet Thalos, her homeworld. She gasped softly. That's where my child is. Mason turned slowly, surprised. Your child? He asked. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. I sold myself so my child could live another day. Her voice broke. He's alone there now. Mason said nothing at first, just looked at her with a strange expression. Then he quietly changed the course of the ship. Hold on, he said. We're going to Thalos. Rena stared at him, not believing her ears. Why would you do that? Because I can't watch another innocent die, he replied. His words were simple, but they carried a strength that made her heart tremble. As the Solara Dawn entered hyperspace, Rhina sat beside Mason, still unsure if this man was her savior or another kind of danger. She watched the blue light of hyperspace reflect in his eyes, and for a moment she saw something human there. Pain, but also hope. And deep inside she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Trust. But somewhere in the far reaches of space, another ship activated its tracker. The human authorities had found Mason's signal. A voice from their command said, Target located, bring him in alive. He's gone rogue. Back on the Solara Dawn, Mason didn't know they were being hunted. He only knew one thing. He wouldn't let the galaxy take another innocent life. Not while he still had a ship to fly. Not while he still had a chance to make things right. And as the stars stretched before them, a new journey began, one of danger, redemption, and the strange power of kindness between two broken souls. The hidden child, the Solara Dawn, drifted through the quiet of space, glowing softly in the light of nearby stars. Inside the ship, Rhina watched from the window, her heart heavy but her hope alive again. For the first time in months, she believed she might see her child again. Captain Mason Hale sat at the controls, focused, silent, and deep in thought. The ship's engines whispered, cutting through the dark like a promise. Rhina often wondered what drove this human to help her. He asked for nothing, wanted no reward, and showed no cruelty. Yet there was something in his eyes, a sadness that never faded sometimes. She would catch him staring into the stars as if searching for someone long gone. She wanted to ask, but something about his silence made her respect it. That day she woke early, the stars of Thalos growing brighter ahead. Mason was in the cargo bay, checking metal containers and strange devices. She walked closer and saw one box glowing with faint blue light. Inside it something shimmered, like liquid energy moving in slow waves. What is that? She asked quietly. Mason looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. It's classified, he said, then sighed. But you deserve to know. He opened the box slightly, and a soft pulse of light filled the room. It's called a Genesis core, he said. An artifact we found buried under the ruins of an alien temple. Rhina's eyes widened. What does it do? It can heal, Mason said, or destroy, depending on how it's used. Rhina stepped back, uneasy. Why are you carrying something so dangerous? He looked at her with tired eyes. Because the people who sent me here want to use it as a weapon. And you? She asked. I want to use it to save lives, he replied simply. Rhina stared at him, unable to understand how one human could carry so much burden alone. Later, while Mason slept in the cockpit, Rhina crept toward the communication console. Her hands shook as she tried to connect to the refugee camp on Thalos. Static filled the air, Then a faint voice crackled through. "Rhina? Is that you?" Her heart leapt. It was her friend Mira. "Mira." "My child, is he?" Mira's voice broke. "He's alive, Rhina, but he's weak. The camps are running out of food. You must hurry." Before Rhina could answer, a loud alarm blared. Mason was standing behind her, eyes cold and sharp. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I was only trying to reach my child," she said, tears in her voice. "You could have exposed our location," he said, walking closer. "The human patrols are tracking this ship if they find us. They'll take both of us." Rhina stepped back, afraid. "Why would they hunt you? You're human too." Mason stopped, looking down. "Because I disobeyed orders," he said, his voice low. "I stole something they wanted, the Genesis core." He turned off the console and walked away. For a moment, silence filled the ship. Then Rhina said softly, "You risk everything for a stranger and her child. Why?" Mason didn't turn around. He just said, "Because once, someone risked everything for me." As hours passed, the tension between them changed into something else. Not fear, but understanding. When Rhina brought him a cup of warm nutrient broth, Mason accepted it quietly. He looked at her and said, "Your child, what's his name?" "Aaron," she whispered, smiling faintly. "He's 5. He loves the stars." Mason smiled for the first time, a small, broken smile. "Then we'll make sure he sees them again," he said. But outside, beyond the stars, danger moved closer. 3 ships were following the Solara Dawn. Their scanners locked on Mason's signal inside one of them. Commander Hurst stared at the radar screen and muttered, "Captain Hale, what are you doing with that alien?" He activated his comms. "Prepare the boarding crew. We're bringing him home, dead or alive." Back on the Solara Dawn, Rhina didn't know death was chasing them. She only saw her hope growing brighter, and Mason, sitting silently in the cockpit, whispered to himself, "Hold on, kid, we're coming." In that moment, 2 lives were tied together by fate. A mother's love and a soldier's redemption. And somewhere in the cold dark between stars, destiny began to move. Journey through the storm, the Solara Dawn glided through endless space. Its engines hummed like a heartbeat, strong but tired outside the window. Stars stretched into blue lines as the ship entered hyperspace. Rhina sat beside Mason, clutching the small pendant around her neck. Every passing second brought her closer to her child, and closer to danger. Mason watched the readings on the screen, his face calm but tense. "The refugee camps on Thalos are under heavy scan," he said quietly. "Anyone trying to land will be stopped." Rhina's voice trembled. "Then how will we reach him?" Mason leaned back, thinking. "There's a storm near the planet's orbit, electromagnetic and violent. No patrol ship would dare enter it." She frowned. "And you want to fly through that?" A small smirk touched his lips. "It wouldn't be the first storm I've survived." Hours later, the blackness of space turned to swirling colors. Electric clouds danced with blue lightning, twisting like living beasts, the ion storm of Thalos. Mason tightened his grip on the controls. The ship shuddered as if it were alive. "Hold on," he warned. "This is going to get rough." Rhina gripped the seat, her heart racing. The entire ship shook as waves of static energy hit the hull. Lights flickered, alarms blared, and the metal groaned like thunder. But Mason's eyes stayed sharp, his hands steady. He guided the Solara Dawn through the chaos, dodging bursts of lightning that could tear the ship apart. In that storm, the sky itself looked angry. Bolts of energy flashed across their path like wild beasts. Rhina cried out as one struck the wing. Smoke filled the cabin, and the power lights died. "Mason!" she shouted. "We're hit!" He slammed a switch, sparks flying. "Stay calm," he said. "I can fix this." He ran to the back, opening a panel of glowing circuits, his hands moving fast. "Tell me what to do," she called out. "Hold the main lever when I say now," he shouted over the roaring sound. The lights flickered again. He yelled, "Now!" Rhina pulled the lever down, her hands burning from the heat. A deep hum shook the ship, then silence. The lights came back, soft and golden. Mason sighed in relief, wiping sweat from his forehead. "You did well," he said. "You saved us." Rhina looked at him, her fear slowly melting into gratitude. "Maybe," she said softly. "We saved each other." For a moment there was peace, but peace never lasted long in their universe. A red warning flashed on the screen. "Incoming signal detected." Mason cursed under his breath. Who would be crazy enough to follow us into the storm? He activated the scanner. A small image appeared. 3 ships behind them marked with the symbol of the Terran command. "They found us," he muttered. Rhina's heart dropped. "Your people?" He nodded grimly. Not anymore. The storm outside roared louder, lightning dancing around the ship like fire. Mason turned to Rhina, his eyes fierce. "I can't fight them and protect you at the same time." She looked back at him, her voice steady for the first time. "Then let me help." He shook his head. "You don't know how. I can try," she said. And before he could stop her, she placed her hands on the ship's console. A soft blue light spread from her palms. Mason watched in shock as the ship's sensors stabilized. Rhina's alien gift, her empathic energy, was linking with the ship's systems, calming them, guiding them through the storm. The ship glowed brighter. Moving smoother through the chaos, Mason smiled faintly. "You're full of surprises," Rhina whispered. "We're not all helpless." As they pushed through the last wall of lightning, the 3 Terran ships vanished behind them. They had made it through the storm. But the silence that followed was not peace. It was the quiet before something bigger. Mason stared at the radar. "They'll be waiting for us on the other side," he said quietly. Rhina looked at him, her golden eyes steady. "Then we'll face them together." The Solara Dawn drifted out of the storm, its hull scarred but glowing. 2 souls once broken by loss, now bound by courage. Ahead of them, the blue light of Thalos shone. The world where hope and heartbreak waited. And deep in the darkness, Commander Hurst watched their ship on his screen and smiled coldly. "You can run, Hale," he whispered, "but you can't hide from your own kind, the child and the truth." The blue world of Thalos filled the view like a wounded jewel. From orbit it looked beautiful, calm, and full of life. But Mason knew the truth. Down there was hunger, chaos, and despair. The Solara Dawn moved through the thin clouds, its engines whispering softly. Inside, Rhina stood by the window, tears in her eyes. "My child is down there," she whispered. Her voice shaking, Mason glanced at her, his expression firm. "Then let's bring him home." The ship landed quietly in the shadow of broken towers. Smoke rose in the distance, and the air shimmered with heat. Rhina stepped out first, her heart racing. All around them were ruined camps, tents made of torn cloth and faces thin with hunger. Children watched from behind metal sheets. Afraid of the strangers, Mason followed her, scanning the area with a small handheld device. "Stay close," he said softly. "This place isn't safe." Rhina's eyes darted through the crowd, searching for one small face. Then she heard it, a weak voice calling her name. She turned sharply and her breath caught. A small boy ran toward her, stumbling but smiling. "Iran!" she cried, falling to her knees. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him tight as tears ran down her face. Mason looked away for a moment, the sight cutting deep into his chest. The boy looked up at the human, curious but not afraid. "Who is he, Mama?" Rhina smiled through her tears. "He's the man who helped us," but Mason wasn't smiling. He was staring at the scanner in his hand. The readings were strange. The air around them pulsed with faint energy. He turned slowly, his eyes landing on Iran. The child's small hands glowed faintly blue, the same color as the Genesis core. Rhina noticed his look. "What is it?" Mason's voice was quiet but heavy. "Rhina, your child. He's connected to the artifact." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He knelt beside the boy, scanning him again. "The Genesis core reacts to life forms that share its energy signature," he said. "Your son isn't just connected, he might be part of it." Rhina pulled Aaron close, fear flashing in her eyes. "Don't say that. He's just a child." "I know," Mason said. "But the humans, they'll come for him when they find out." A deep rumble echoed across the sky. Mason's communicator flashed red, an incoming signal. "Commander Hurst." "Mason Hale," the voice growled. "You have something that belongs to us." Mason's jaw tightened. "Turn yourself in, and maybe the alien woman and her spawn will be spared." Rhina froze, clutching her son, her voice shook. "Spawn? He's just a boy." Hurst laughed coldly. "He's a resource, nothing more." Mason cut the channel and turned to Rhina. "They've found us. We have minutes before they land." She looked terrified. "What do we do?" Mason opened the Genesis core container, the light spilling out like a living flame. "We use it," he said, "to save him, to save everyone here." Rhina's eyes widened. "But it could kill you." Mason smiled faintly. "Then I'll make it count." He placed the glowing core near the ground, its energy spreading like waves through the camp. The dying plants around them came back to life. The air filled with warmth. Children looked up in wonder as the storm clouds parted above. Rena watched in awe as her sun's glow brightened, merging with the core's light. The Genesis core pulsed once, then fused into the boy's chest. The light faded, leaving Iran breathing softly. Alive and stronger than before, Mason fell to one knee, his vision blurring. Rina rushed to him. "Mason! What's happening?" He smiled weakly. The core was never a weapon. It was life itself. She held his hand tightly. "Don't you dare leave us now." He looked at her one last time, whispering, "Protect him. He's the future." In the distance, ships descended through the clouds, Terran soldiers surrounding the camp. Rina stood between them and her child, her eyes glowing with new strength. And as the light of the core faded from the sky, Mason Hale's last words echoed in the air like a promise. Humans don't destroy hope. They carry it, the price of love. The sky above Thalos burned red. Flames rose across the refugee camp as Terran ships descended through thick clouds. The ground trembled, the air crackled with heat and fear. Rina held her son close, hiding behind the remains of a broken shelter. Mason Hale stood beside her. His eyes cold and focused. He had faced death before, but never like this time. He was protecting something worth dying for. The roar of engines grew louder. Metallic boots hit the ground as Terran soldiers surrounded the camp. Their armor gleamed silver under the dying sun. At their center walked Commander Hurst, tall, broad, and merciless. He carried the authority of the Terran command like a weapon. "Mason Hale," his voice thundered. "You've broken every law that keeps this galaxy in balance." Mason stepped out from cover, unarmed, his coat flapping in the hot wind. "You call it balance," he said calmly. "I call it slavery." Hurst smirked. "You stole the Genesis core, you sided with aliens, and now you protect one of their spawn." Rina flinched, her eyes burning with anger. Mason's voice rose, steady and defiant. "That child carries life, not war. He's proof we can be better." Hurst raised his weapon. "You always were a dreamer, Hale." The Terran soldiers aimed their rifles. Ready to fire, Mason looked back at Rina and whispered, "When I say run, take him and don't look back." The first shot cracked through the air. Mason dove aside, pulling out a small energy pistol from his belt. Blue flashes filled the dust as beams tore through the camp. He returned fire, precise and sharp. Every move was a memory of his old training. Every breath a fight against fate. Rina shielded Iran with her body, whispering prayers in her native tongue. The ground shook again, a large blast throwing debris across the field. Rina cried out as a wall of fire rose between them and Mason. Through the smoke, she saw him standing. Half his armor burned, his left arm bleeding. "Mason!" she screamed. He turned, coughing, his eyes glowing with determination. "Go!" he shouted. "Get him to the ship." She hesitated, tears streaming down her face. "I won't leave you." He smiled faintly. "You already saved me." He turned back toward Hurst. The commander marched forward, rage in his eyes. "You think one man can change the way things are?" Mason wiped blood from his face, his voice calm. "One man can start it." He pressed a control on his wrist, activating the ship's remote systems above them. The Solara Dawn roared to life. Its defense cannons locked onto the Terran squad. Hurst shouted, "Take him down!" But Mason raised his pistol, eyes blazing. "For the child," he said, and fired. A bright explosion ripped through the air, the blast wave pushing Rina and her son back. Smoke covered everything. When it cleared, the camp was in ruins. The soldiers scattered, and Mason lay on the ground. Barely breathing, Rina ran to him. Falling to her knees, he looked up weakly, his eyes dimming. "You have to go," he whispered. She shook her head. "No, we leave together." He reached out, touching her hand, his voice fading. "The core. It changed him. Your son will heal this world," Rina sobbed. "Please don't talk like that." He smiled faintly. "Love was the only order worth breaking." His hand fell still, his eyes slowly closing. The man who had once been a soldier, a weapon, died as something greater, a protector, a friend, a human. Rina's scream echoed across the silent plain. The Solara Dawn lowered beside her, its hatch open like an invitation. She lifted her son, tears burning her cheeks. Aaron looked back one last time at Mason's body and whispered softly, "Thank you." As the ship rose into the sky, the battlefield shrank below them. Fire and ash turned to clouds, and the world of Thalos glowed faintly blue again. The core's light pulsed gently in the boy's chest. Rhina held him close, whispering, "He gave everything so you could live." And far behind them, the storm of war faded. In its place, a seed of peace began to grow. The dawn of hope years passed since the flames of Thalos burned out. The war between humans and alien colonies had faded into silence. But silence was not peace, it was the breath before a new beginning. Far beyond the broken worlds, the Solara dawn drifted through the stars. Its once scarred hull now gleamed with soft blue light. Inside the ship, a young boy stood by the window, staring at the endless stars. He was older now, his eyes bright and calm, his heart glowing faintly with the energy of the Genesis core. Aaron, the child who had once been weak and hungry, had become something greater, a bridge between species. Behind him, Rhina watched quietly, her face marked with time and sorrow. Yet filled with quiet strength every night, she still heard Mason's last words. Love was the only order worth breaking. And every time she looked at her son, she knew that Mason's sacrifice had not been in vain. Across the galaxy, whispers spread of a blue child, a being who could heal poisoned lands and bring dead soil back to life. To some, he was a myth, to others a weapon, but to Rhina, he was her son and Mason's legacy one morning. As the Solara dawn approached the orbit of Earth, alarms began to echo. Rhina looked up sharply. "Aaron, what is it?" He frowned, his hand glowing faintly, feeling something deep beyond the stars. "They're calling us," he said softly. "Humans, they're in trouble?" Rhina's eyes widened. "The Terran command?" He nodded. "Their colonies are dying. The same sickness that destroyed Thalos." The boy turned to her, his expression calm yet determined. "I can help them," he said. "I can fix what they broke." Rhina grabbed his shoulders, fear trembling in her voice. "They'll use you." "Just like before?" Aaron smiled faintly. The same small smile Mason once had. "Maybe," he said. "But someone has to try." The ship descended toward the Earth, a world once full of power, now scarred and cold. Massive cities stood half abandoned, their skies gray, their oceans sick with pollution. But when the blue child stepped out, people stopped. Thousands gathered in the streets, watching as light poured from his hands where the light touched. Trees grew again, rivers cleared, and air became clean. The world began to breathe once more. Reporters broadcast the miracle across every channel. Alien ambassadors watched in silence, and for the first time in history, humans and aliens stood side by side, not as enemies, but as witnesses of hope from the highest tower in New Geneva. A council of Terran leaders gathered among them. A young officer held a worn data chip, Mason Hale's last message. They played it for the galaxy to hear. His voice echoed like a ghost carried by the stars. "If you're hearing this, it means the fight is over. We were wrong to think strength came from fear. It always came from compassion, from love, from the choice to protect, not to dominate. The future isn't written in blood, it's written in kindness. Humanity will rise again, not as conquerors, but as guardians." As the message ended, silence filled the hall. Some wept, others bowed their heads. Even the aliens who once feared humans felt something new. Respect. Back on the surface, Rhina stood beside her son as sunlight broke through the clouds. The world around them shimmered with new life. Aaron turned to her and asked, "Do you think Mason can see us?" She smiled softly. "He doesn't need to. His heart is here," she said, placing her hand over his chest. "Every time you heal something, every time you show mercy, he lives again." Aaron looked at the horizon where light touched the ruins of cities. "Then we'll keep going," he said, his voice strong. "We'll rebuild, humans and aliens, together." The Solara dawn rose once more into the dawn sky, its trail glowing blue like a promise written across the heavens. And in that moment, the galaxy remembered the man who changed everything. Not a soldier, not a savior, but a human who chose love over war. And from his choice, a new age began.